We have a great speaker today, Gabriella Cazares-Kelly. She's also asked for some time, and we're really excited about this, to go over the diversity, equity, inclusion focus. And I, for one, am really looking forward to hear Gabriella talk about that. Let's see, as you say, Gabriella is the Pima County Recorder, taking office January 2021. She leads an office that oversees voter registration, early voting, and document recording for the county. She is a proud union dues paying former Red for Ed public school educator and community organizer. She is one of 4 women who co-founded Indivisible Tohono, a grassroots community organization that provides opportunities for education and civic engagement for members of her tribe, the Tohono O'odham Nation. She was inspired to run for office after encountering many systemic barriers preventing people from simply getting registered to vote. She lives with her husband, Ryan, and their 2 children who are now voting age. She is the first Native American to hold an elected Pima County office and one of only 4 Native Americans to hold a county level office in Arizona. Her Twitter handles are at Gabriella C. Kelly and at Pima Recorder. Let's give a warm Democrats of Greater Tucson welcome to Gabriella Cazares-Kelly.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. Today I'm going to share, if I can share slides or share my screen, please. So skuktash everybody, Anyan Chugi Gabriella Cazares-Kelly, Bisimochkuk Amjit, Anyutka Pima Chukshan Ohahandam. Hi, everybody. My name is Gabriella Cazares-Kelly. I'm from the communities of Bismoo and Cook, which are located right here in beautiful Pima County, where I serve as the county recorder. And today I'm sharing a little bit, I'm going to provide some time a little later. So if you have questions for me in my office in particular, please ask me those questions. But today I'm going to be presenting about supporting your electeds of color after we get us elected. And so this is a quick version because I only have a very short amount of time. But this conversation actually started, and thank you so much to Joe for the invitation, for me to present today about this. This had stemmed from a conversation after another speaker who I refer to as someone who has shown their white supremacy and has white supremacy takes on voting rights, was allowed to speak here at your group. That really, I really appreciated having a conversation about that, because I think that a lot of times in our blind eagerness to solve a problem or to get information, sometimes we're not recognizing when we're amplifying others, or we're not paying very close attention to the larger statements that's putting out into our community. And so I was invited here to speak about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that rather than going into these really high level things, I want to talk about some of the low level things that I see and I experience on a daily basis, just as your current elected official who is also a person of color. So first, I'm going to talk about things that are going to make you feel uncomfortable. I really want you to understand that if you're uncomfortable, it means that you're learning. This is a judgment-free zone. So we're going to have some opportunity to ask some questions later. And I'm not judging you. We are making this space and time a learning opportunity. And so those questions are going to be appropriate. And we'll get there. We're going to focus on listening rather than complicating or affirming any statements that the presenter makes. And please hold all major questions until the end. And I assure you, there's going to be someone in this group who says, oh my gosh, she's talking about me. I am not talking about anyone in general, no one specific, and there is no need for any public apologies. If there is something that I say that makes you uncomfortable, it's okay to sit with it. If you're really, really uncomfortable and you really want to address it, you can send me an email later, but this is not the space for public apologies, and I'm not looking for any of that. So here we go. Okay, so one of the very first things, and I think a very basic thing, when presenting us in formal settings, and I'm referring to us as your elected officials of color, please use our names correctly and use our titles. If you're announcing us at an event, practice saying our names. Our names are normal in our own communities. And when you mispronounce our names, you're indicating that we're not a part of your community. And so it's really a moment where if there are feelings of feeling tokenized, where we're just kind of parading the brown person out for the pictures, it kind of reaffirms that, because if you're pronouncing somebody's name and you haven't taken the time to learn how to pronounce their name, they're not really an invited guest. They're not really a person that's a part of your community. The other thing is you should always use the correct titles until we ask you otherwise. I see this a lot, and it sounds really silly, but oftentimes I will be in a situation where I might be on a panel with, let's say, Recorder Stephen Richer. Recorder Stephen Richer will be announced as Recorder Richer, and then I will be announced as Recorder Gabby. Gabby is my personal nickname from my family. And anytime I hear that, I'm just kind of like, whoa, what happened to my last name, Cazares-Kelly? Or why am I being referred to by my first nickname as opposed to my last name, like Recorder Richer is? And so I see that very often. That is something that happens to me quite a bit. Or sometimes he'll be referred to as Recorder, and I simply will be referred to as Gabriella. And I really don't like that distinction. I think it shows an undermining of me and the role that I play within Pima County. Sometimes people can feel really uncomfortable by that, especially if you and I know each other and you know me as Gabby. If you're introducing me to another person, you should always introduce me simply by my title and allow me to give that person the ability to be given a different name if that's what I choose to do. Recently, I was within my own community and I was being introduced as Recorder Cazares-Kelly, and I was meeting children. And for those children, I wanted to say, my name is Gabriella, my name is Gabby, you can call me Gabby. And that was my choice in that setting to be able to give that. But we're always presenting people within their formal roles. And then again, that relationship building is what is going to help you determine whether or not you're cool to continue calling that person by a nickname or not. Informal settings depends on your relationship with the elected. So what I like to tell people, for me, especially because I am known as Gabby with my friends and family, I prefer to be called Gabriella in public. If you see me walking down the street, Gabriella is fine, and I'm gonna hi, and I'm gonna be excited to see you. If you and I have shared a meal together, then you have permission to call me Gabby. But again, if you have that permission and you know me as Gabby, and you are getting on stage and you are saying that name into a microphone, you have to recognize that when you have that microphone in your hand, you are now giving that permission to the rest of the group to give my nickname. So it is much more preferred for you to give my title and then allow me to have those individual interactions with those individual people to determine how I'm going to be called. And again, it's such a simple thing, but it really does lay a foundation for the way that I'm going to be treated within the room, how I'm going to be treated within the county, and whether or not sometimes whether or not my word is going to be accepted or not when I'm speaking somewhere. And so that's really important. And that's an important way that you can be an ally to me by modeling that language. And again, it's completely different when it's on a one-to-one basis, but we have to develop that relationship for us to get there. So for me, how to pronounce Cazares-Kelly. I like to tell people, and I used to teach my students this, Gabriella grew up in a casa on the res. Casa on the res, casa res, Cazares-Kelly. As close as you can get, as I know it's a little hard, but it is very much appreciated. Casa on the res, Cazares-Kelly. I also am Thanatham, and anytime I have the opportunity to teach people how to pronounce Thanatham, and I saw Katie Garmany, who's on the call, who has worked in the Thanatham community for a long time. I saw the little wince when Thanatham was pronounced. So here is a very nice cheat sheet for you. The formal pronunciation is Thanatham. And that's something you would hear on like the radio. You would hear it in the news pronounced this way. If you hear a Desert Diamond Casino ad, they're going to say and that's a very formal pronunciation. The more commonly used pronunciation, this is the pronunciation that I use. This is the most common that you will hear is simply thaw na ah thumb. Thaw, like you thaw something frozen. No, I don't want that. Oh, how cute. Look at my thumb. Thaw na autumn. Thaw na autumn. The difference between the two, the formal pronunciation would be like saying New Orleans versus the more common pronunciation of Nolans. So thaw na autumn, the bottom one is the preferred. Please use that. I just don't, I always tell people the formal pronunciation because I don't want them to hear somebody saying it properly on the radio and thinking, oh, this woman is saying it wrong. No, they're not. They're just they're over enunciating. Thano means desert, Autumn means people. And the reason that it looks so different from the way that it's written is because it's actually written in the Thanatham language, but there's no special characters to indicate that it's actually Thanatham. So I always refer to myself as an Autumn woman. I'm a people, a person, but I am not a desert. So anyway, there you go. So another thing that I am very, very challenged with are microaggressions. I experience microaggressions almost anytime I am in public. And what microaggressions are they sometimes are small, they can be environmental slights, they can be physical, verbal. They are ways that people are slightly insulting, either intentionally or unintentionally, which communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative messages to target people based solely upon their marginalized group membership. So this is something that I deal with quite a bit. And so I wanted to share with you some of the microaggressions that I get on a very regular basis when I am out presenting as your elected official in places where maybe I'm talking about voting or I'm talking about election law. I'm talking about all of these things, and these are still the questions that I will get just out in public. So, and eventually Microaggressions simply become aggressions. My husband says every single time I say, is it a microaggression? He says, is it a microaggression or just an aggression? Good point. Are we? Okay. So where am I from? Wanting to know, again, I'm talking about elections. I'm talking about voting, and people are trying to ask me about my personal life. Do you know? And they'll ask me if I know an obscure native that is not relevant in any way. A lot of times I'll get asked if I know, a jewelry maker or a drummer or something like that. And it's, unless it's like another native who is an elected official or another native who, specifically within my tribe, whose name and who has a connection with me, like maybe you're very familiar with my community and you know that I'm from the community of Pismo, and you want to ask me if I know Edward Manuel, who's also from the Pismo district. That would make sense to me. But if you're asking me about somebody in a different reservation with absolutely no connections to any of the interests that I have, it's just really not helpful. It's not a helpful conversation. Sometimes people will ask me for my credentials, and especially my degrees. They want to know about my educational experience. That doesn't seem like it's really odd, like, oh, people are probably just curious about you. But again, they're usually not asking my male counterparts these questions, or my other colleagues these questions. These are usually directed at me. How did you meet? After learning my husband is white. Again, really just kind of going into my personal life a little bit more, which I think is a little odd. Let's powwow, meaning let's have a meeting. No, a powwow is an actual event. It is a moment where you pray and you sing and dance and have ceremony, and there's food there and vendors. It's actually like a fun event. Going to a meeting is not a fun event. Those are not to be equated with one another. Anytime anybody sees that I'm angry, upset about something, and asking me if I'm going on a war dance, no, that is not appropriate. Rain dance comments when it's raining. Anytime people talk about low on the totem pole, anything, no, the totem poles are actually have spiritual significance and family significance, and they're significant to a tribe. And we're nowhere near any of that culture, and it's just really random. People asking me about peyote, and yes, that has happened on campaign trail. People touching my jewelry, clothing, or hair without permission. I've had people maybe help me when my hair is stuck on a name tag or something like that. That I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people running their fingers through my hair, touching my skin, and commenting on my skin color as I'm in an official capacity trying to literally do my job. Stoic Indian imagery, cigar store Indians. Sometimes that's an issue when I show up to places and I'm just like, read the room. Did you know I was going to show up here? Because this imagery is ugly. Indian mascots, same thing. Or when people talk to me about fry bread, I'm like, unless it was within context, it's really inappropriate. It's distracting from the work that I do. So when I engage with people, I'm very much an open book, and I very much share with people. Sometimes I overshare with people. But when we're in settings where I'm trying to do my job, and people have questions for me, I want people to think about whether the question is necessary or only if it's going to satisfy your curiosity. And I think that that really speaks to one's value on others' time. So when you are feeling this way, and you may have a ton of curiosity, a lot of times people will say things to me like, I've never met a Native American before. I've never met somebody from the reservation. Is it offensive to say the word reservation? Is there a reason that there's the word tribe or nation? There's so many questions that people have about me, my community. And so what I want people to do is, number one, I want them to ask, is this relevant to the office that I'm serving? If you were asking questions like this about, other elected officials, is this relevant to the office that they serve? Can I find this information on Google? Is this a Google search? Have you tried Google searching it? I'm going to let you know right now, it is really hard to find information about my tribe in particular, but just general Native American information that is on the internet. And a lot of times people will ask me very obscure historical questions that I don't know the answers to. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to answer this, I'm just going to Google it. Have you tried Googling it yet? And it really kind of shows people their value on my time. Is it my job responsibility to Google your curious questions? Or could you do that in your personal time? And are you asking a personal question? Again, is this relevant to the office, or is this a little bit too much information? When you think about it in the context of dating, are you getting too personal on a first date here with me and asking me questions about my family or community that might come at a later time? Or is this relevant or helpful? And are you valuing this person's time? So 5 ways that you can be a better ally. Number 1 is to get to know people of color as individuals. So hearing from us is really helpful. Following us on social media is, what we're interested in, where we go, all of that. We're putting all of that out there already. And we all have our individual personalities. I'm kind of known as a little bit quirky, sometimes silly, but also I tend to share things in an educational format. I'm an educator, and you can very much tell that from my social media. That is how I present things to the world. And I'm also a Trekkie, and I'm also a nerd. Getting to know us as individuals, as opposed to wanting to ask those historical questions, that is also something that's important. Showing up to our events. I don't have any events at this moment, but there are a lot of elected officials. There are a lot of people who are doing things that, you should be at. Their Juneteenth is coming up. The last time I went there, the Democrats didn't have a table. Why? That's a community that you're trying to get in contact with, you're trying to learn more, and you don't know if somebody in that community is going to step up and run for office. And the only way that you're going to be able to get to know them is if you go and you spend time in their community, and not just with your flyers and not just trying to invite them to your events, but go there and experience the food and the music and sit down and listen. And you don't have to ask questions, but you can absorb. Listen. And then doing exactly what you are doing right now. I bet you everyone in here has learned something, or maybe have challenged people to think about things in a different way than they normally have. You are giving me the time, you are giving me the space to talk about these things that make people uncomfortable. And I appreciate that. And that is how you're going to get this information. What I will say though, if you are doing this and you are inviting or asking people to talk about things that they normally don't talk about, if it's outside of their job duties, you may want to consider providing them with payment, with some kind of, I can't think of the word right now, because this takes additional labor to create things. Even just like this PowerPoint, I spent some time, putting it together and making sure that I was hitting the things that I needed to talk about. That was time away from my family and time away from, other things, and that demand, because I'm a person in spotlight, it's exponential. Like it's so great. So I actually a lot of times will decline, depending on what the topic is. If it's not relevant to my job, it's very rare that I will talk about these. I used to do microaggression trainings, complete, like we did an in-person thing and there was a little activity involved, and that's a heavy lift, and it's a heavy lift after this too. And so the fifth thing is to hold others accountable. So I've experienced some pretty overt racism while I've been in office from others, and there is always a way to hold those people accountable. If there are people that are treating us inappropriately, there's always someone to call. I am asking you, if you see this, if you understand this, if you watch as you're seeing somebody berate me in public, there is always a way for you to use your privilege to call that person out, call that person in, make sure that you're making it clear that it is not acceptable. There are always endorsers, there are donors, there are sponsors. There are ways that you can hold other people accountable for their behavior. And even if it's somebody that isn't ever going to change their mind, they'll at least know, well, anytime I'm rude to this person and I'm publicly berating them in public, I'm going to get a phone call, and that's going to create more work for my staff. You know what? Maybe today I'm not going to do it. That is still something that's really effective. And it, rather than having me be the angry brown woman or the sensitive brown woman, when you are spotting racism, you are watching white supremacy in front of you and it's happening, I need you to call it out. I need you to talk about it. I need you to write an email and do the things that you do to bring attention to it, because it is not okay. And I can tell you, the other electeds of color and I, we are a community. We do connect with one another. We need to know that our community is behind us, because we're doing a lot of heavy lifts. There we are. That is all that I have regarding this topic. And I'm going to stop sharing right there. And I'm going to open the floor up for any questions that you may have.
Okay, Gabriella, thank you so much.
I see one comment in the chat. Jeannie Christie, thank you so much. African American Democratic Caucus was at the Juneteenth. You're right. But when we're talking about events like, if I have a Native American event and only the Native American groups are there, and then other people are asking me at another time, well, I don't know anything about Native Americans. I'm like, why didn't you just come to our event? You could have come to our event. You could have learned so much. And I think people are really hesitant. A lot of times they're like, well, I'm not sure whose event that is. I don't know if I'm allowed to come there. I don't feel 100% comfortable. And I think that's like I said, sometimes that discomfort is okay. It's okay for you to be uncomfortable. But yes, you should absolutely, whether or not you're tabling there, are you going there? Are you going to, I know that a discussion a couple years ago was, oh my gosh, it's so hot and we cannot find enough volunteers to sit out there. We have older volunteers. Well, that's okay. Well, why don't you just show up in your personal capacity and learn about the community and sit there and, buy some art from vendors and, enjoy the food and listen to the music and learn some new artists, learn, learn what other programs are out there. People are performing. It's a huge community event. And so I think that's more about what I'm talking about is really how are you truly engaging with other communities um, and making them a part of your community.
Okay. Mike, do you have any questions from the chat room?
Not yet, but I do have a question of my own. Gabby,
Sure.
thank you so much for being here, and thank you for sharing with us the emotional labor that a person of color, a person of a minority community has to go through in order to make us aware of these issues. I want to thank you personally for that. And secondly, my question to you today is, will you be taking questions as recorded today, as well as just a person talking about diversity issues?
Absolutely. I actually, I think it'd be really kind of cool for me to share with you where I am right now. I'm actually in my hotel room in Phoenix. I just got here and they were so kind to give me this room a little early so that I didn't have to do this presentation in the lobby. But I'm here for an election officer conference. They are going over so many things. We have the Secretary of State here, the other recorders and elections directors from across the state. One of the things that I know we're talking about is how are we preparing for 2024? How are we making sure that people are keeping emotionally and mentally their mental well-being, because we've seen a huge influx of staff. One third, there's only 15 counties. 5 county reporters have left in the middle of their terms. We have a whole new 5 who are serving. We have a number of elections directors who have left. I got word that Cochise County, they had a new elections director start last week, and they also had their last person put in their notice. So they're having 100% new people in Cochise County. So there's a lot to do. There's on top of everything else. So I'm really looking forward to this conference, and I brought with me my chief deputy and my voting manager so we can learn some best practices and learn more about proposed laws and the impact it'll have on 2024 for sure.
If I may have a follow-up question on that, you know, we've heard a lot and seen a lot about some of the abuse and threats that election staffs and election directors especially are coming under. Recently, Mara was, you know, awarded $130,000 for the emotional and professional pain that she went through.
Yeah.
As an election director there in Cochise. Can you talk about or characterize any stories that you feel are exemplary of the kind of threats that election workers and election directors are under these days?
Well, one of the things that I will say, Pima County is the blueberry in the bowl of tomato soup. So that is really, really significant, because our voters in Pima County are very satisfied with the process. Even, you know, we see it on a bipartisan level. People call into our offices and they're hot and angry and they're just ready to pop off on my staff members. And because we have spent so much time training on the phone, we have spent time with our outgoing messages, we have been putting out so much more information. When they learn the information and they understand the process, you know, they might say like, my ballot never came. And we'll say, well, let's take a look at your file. Oh, okay. And then we said, oh, well, it looks like you moved in this, you know, this date and you never sent anything back or blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, there's a justification for it. And then those are just dissipated. So we have really great voters in Pima County. But yes, especially in light of Carrie Lake's comments, Carrie Lake's conspiracy theorist comments about fraud and her allegations, Abe Hamida, you know, Fincham, all of the things that they were saying directly resulted in threats to me at my office. None of them credible, none of them worrisome, but enough to we have a standard protocol. We are a part of the ACTIC community. We have, which, oh, I'm so sorry. I have all of these acronyms, and I don't, I don't know what they are off the top of my head. But we have a procedure here when we have any type of security concerns that we report them to our statewide coordinator. And then from there, they will give us recommendations on what to do, whether that's, you know, to alert local police, or if we get a phone call that is, you know, just really abusive, or a voicemail or a web address or something, we send them as much information. And we actually have the FBI, you know, the Homeland Security. We have a whole group of people who are especially paying attention to elected officials and elections officers to ensure that our safety is prioritized, and the safety of our staff. But we are not experiencing that on any level near what the other people are in other counties. Recorder Richard in Maricopa County has had people show up to his house and refuse to leave. And he's had to call the police twice. Former recorder Paquette of Yuma kept having credible threats of people threatening to poison and kill her dogs, which is what prompted her to leave that position and seek another position within the county. A lot of what I'm hearing from my Republican counterparts is that their Republican base are the people they used to go and present to, and they were welcomed in those spaces, and now they are having to rethink their safety plans. They're not able to go to those public meetings because the conspiracy theories are just so outrageous. And many of them are tired of it. We are not in Pima County. We are not seeing that type of organizing. And the interactions that we've had with the Republican Party have actually been mild. So we invited, we didn't invite, they requested a meeting, and I think they tried to just do a drop by when I was out of the office. And so because of that, you know, we invited them to come and at a specific time to have one of those meetings, and then we gave them a tour. We did the same thing with the Democratic Party had requested if they could have their interns come and take a tour. Like, we're very happy to accommodate in that way. And then just the other day at the Board of Supervisors meeting, what the Republican chair had a nice comment about one of my staff members. So it's you know, again, we're not seeing that hostility on our level, and I'm not concerned about my personal safety or anything like that. Katie, I see your hand up.
We have Katie Garmani.
Thank you. As Recorder Cazares-Kelly knows, I'm very concerned about how one pronounces Thon-Autumn. And you often hear it mispronounced by people who have been mispronouncing it for decades. Is it appropriate for someone like myself to then contact them and say, hey, you got this wrong? What would you recommend?
Oh my gosh, please. And funnily enough, it's a little buried on my on the Pima County Recorder website. But if you go to, like, we released a sticker in 3 languages, and you know, we had a breakdown there. And I think there's the how to pronounce Thon-Autumn link on there. But if not, if you go to my personal social media, or if you reach out to me and ask, I actually have a whole video on how to pronounce that. I send it to people. I also have it on the back of my business cards. I send that out, you know, as often as I can, and I hand them out to people. Yeah, and I think that I've seen a really significant positive change within our local news because they are interacting more often with me. And so I'll give people the time, especially if they're on the news or the radio or addressing large groups. I went to 3 different graduation ceremonies in 2 at the U of A and 1 at Arizona, 1 for Arizona State University. And all of them did land acknowledgements, and all 3 butchered Thon Otham, and it was super cringy for the indigenous people. And in the, we're just, oh no, oh, it's so painful. And, and then it becomes very performative, that there's no meaningful relationship there. It's just something that they're reading a statement, off a piece of paper. They don't know any Otham, because an Otham would have corrected them.
And if I may just continue, not with a question, but just to remind people, you've all seen a sticker on my shirt, and there's a new sticker that you can get for a donation, and I hope you'll tell us about that.
I didn't bring one inside. I'm in my hotel room. But yes, I do. I have a new sticker. I'm riding a bicycle, and we had such great fun, and I'm wearing a helmet, and I got the braids, and I was just invited to speak at a young women's camp for young Thon Otham women, and I had the stickers there, and I gave them all out, and one of them was staring at the sticker, and she goes, "And you wear glasses?" Because I haven't been wearing my glasses in public. And I said, "Yeah, I just up until recently, my prescription changed. And now if I'm trying to, I only wear them when I'm watching TV or, at something where I have to look far away or when I'm driving." I said, "But, if I'm trying to read close, I have to take them off." And she goes, "Oh, just like my grandma." She goes, "But I wear glasses." And she was super excited. And so they're just really excited for that representation. But it's in keeping with that same mantra, Indigenous woman coming through, whether or not people are ready for it. And I feel like people have, the support that I've received has been really tremendous, and I've really appreciated it, because we have done some really progressive things and made some incredible changes that have impacted voters already. And so I am feeling very confident as I'm not officially running yet. I won't until after the City of Tucson elections. So after November, I will then, get started on running for 2024, but it'll be a very big cycle. And just since you all care about voting, let me tell you what's happening. We have a primary for 2023 coming up for the City of Tucson. The City of Tucson facilitates their own election. This is where it gets complicated. So that normally means they get their ballots, they send ballots out, they get them back. We get them only to signature verify, and then we give them back, which is different from the regular process. However, in November, we are looking to consolidate with the TUSD election. TUSD is having a bond override, and the number of TUSD residents who also live in the City of Tucson is something like 225,000 voters. So even though it'll be an all vote by mail, if we do not consolidate, there will be 2 separate ballots. And so likely what will happen is the City of Tucson will ask us to consolidate that election, which means then my office is then running that election, which means we're going into election mode a little earlier than we expected for 2024. Otherwise, December 20th, we will start sending out notifications for the 2024 cycle, 90-day notices, to make sure that people are going to know where their ballot is being sent to. We have a presidential election, a presidential preference election in March, which only people of a registered to that party who are having a election can participate in that. So if you're a Democrat and there is a Democratic presidential preference, then you can vote in it. But if you are an independent, you cannot. So it's only people, and this is the one time every 4 years, and it's completely confusing. So a lot of people are going to be upset and angry. We also don't yet know which parties are going to have a presidential preference election. Sometimes if the Democrats pick Joe Biden, maybe we won't have one as Democrats. If there are more and the Democrats want to support or provide the opportunity to support a different candidate, which again, we don't know at this time, we don't know what's going to happen. So we have the presidential preference happening in March. We have the primary election, which I will be on the ballot in the primary election, where we choose which of our candidates we want to represent our party on a lower level. And that will be happening in August. And then the big show, which is the 2024 presidential election, will be happening in November. So we have a lot of elections between now and then.
Okay, we have a question from John Laspe.
Yes, just to go back, Gabriella, on the pronunciation issues, as somebody who lived in Quebec for many years, some of us never get it right. Try as you may. I have a friend who moved there the same time I did 45 years ago, and I asked our old co-workers, how's he doing on his French 45 years later? And they said, no, he still can't pronounce things right. So a little patience on both sides. You know, we try is all I can say.
Absolutely. And I absolutely understand. My husband speaks a bit of French, and I have tried to learn over the years. And he tells me I butcher it every single time. But, you know, we get as close as we can. We do what we can and practice. And sometimes that's it, you know, like we are now able to, sometimes there are names that they become commonplace, Dostoevsky, or, you know, like, you know, we think about some of these really hard names that we have just within our culture, and they're just normal. They're just a normalized part of our culture, you know. But I definitely empathize there. And then I would always just, you know, if you have the microphone and you know that you're gonna screw it up, you acknowledge that you're trying, and then you ask that person, can you please tell us how to pronounce your name? And that, you know, and I think that goes a long way.
I have a question for Recorder Cazares-Kelly. I would like to know, well, actually, you said something that prompted my curiosity. You said we have lots of great progressive things that we've done here in the Recorder's office, and I want to get a preview of the re-election campaign for Recorder Cazares-Kelly. So I was wondering if you could talk in more detail about some of those things that you've accomplished as Recorder.
Well, so one of the things that I think one of the biggest things that most people are familiar with are our office switched from paper poll books to electronic poll books, which now means that we're able to offer vote centers throughout the entire Pima County, which is transformative. People are no longer being sent away. It reduced the number of provisional ballots from 20,000 in a normal election to less than, I think we were at 2,500, which was amazing. It was amazing, and such an effective use of people's time, because a lot of times what was happening is, you know, we were having these needless forms, and it was delaying results. And so I think that we're in really great shape there. We have spent a great deal of time improving the accessibility of the office, making sure that our website is, you know, compatible to e-readers, that we are thinking about our most marginalized community members, our deaf community, our blind community, folks who might need assistance when voting, and prioritizing that information and putting that information out there. We've also really spent a lot of time working on our communications plans with anything that we do with our office. So making sure that we're communicating our efforts to the public, and in a time when we're dealing with conspiracy theories and a question on the integrity of the election system. I think now more than ever, that's incredibly important. We have spent a lot of time developing a real deep understanding of transparency within our office and trying to provide that to the community. The other thing that, you know, a lot of times we talk only about the flashy voting side because that's what most people are really excited about, but we've also made tremendous changes on the recording side as well. Just recently we launched Eagle Recorder, which means that people can, number one, they can view recorded documents. You can all look up your documents for your home and see your property documents there online. You can do that for free.
Wow.
That's a big deal.
Huge.
That's huge.
Yeah, especially
Before-
since there's like a wave of this, you know, real estate title fraud that's going around. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's really important.
Oh, I'm going to get even there. There's even better for you news for you. So number one, you can see your documents. Before, you used to have to purchase your document through a really complicated process before you could see if it was the right document. So now you can go and do that research on your own. That's something that is because of me and because of my priorities. Basically, I want to make public records public. I wanted them to be available to you so that you can use them. I hear a really great response from homeowners associations, from our real estate community, our surveyors. There's a great many people who are very excited about that. You can also now more easily record documents online, and you can make payments online for things that before you couldn't. You used to have to come into my office. Day one, I tried to see if I could shut down my front desk because we were in the middle of a COVID spike. When I first took office, I had more than 20% of my office out on some COVID related leave, and we were trying to see if we could close the front counter. And then we found out we can't even take a payment. We can't take a payment online. How are people going to do this? They have to send in a mail check or walk in a check. And that was, you know, really the only way, or they could come and use the credit card terminal in our office, but that required them coming in. And so we've made it so that they can do a lot of things online, including recording maps, which is really exciting. That's something that we've never, ever been able to electronically do. And we also now have a new service called Fraud Guard, which if you would like to register for it, you can go to our website and sign up. And if somebody puts any information under your name or your address, you can get an automatic email alert. In addition to alerts, we have also made it so that you can get an alert when you send back your ballot. You can sign up either by email or text message so that when you send us your ballot, actually when we send you your ballot, you'll get a notification. When we get it back, you'll get a notification when we've signature verified it and accepted it, and when it's transferred over to the elections department. And so that's an incredible resource also. And that is something that that was a special request on my part. I have driven all of these innovative updates because this is what we need, and this is what our community deserves. We deserve to have this cutting edge technology to be able to keep us informed about the things that are so important to our everyday lives, like voting and like our property.
Okay, Andrea Kennedy has a question for you.
Oh, thank you. I'm afraid I'm making you repeat yourself. Well, what do we do now instead of provisional ballots? Because I did quite a few of those in my time.
So for provisional ballots, the reason that provisional ballots will still always be an option, and a provisional ballot is the protection for the voter. It is a way to ensure that your vote will have additional investigation before anything else happens. So never be afraid if you're asked to fill out a provisional ballot, fill out the provisional ballot, because we're going to do our hardest. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that your vote is eligible. We're going to look at your voter registration forms, anything that might be pending, anything like that. But prior to this past election cycle, provisional ballots were also issued to people who showed up to the wrong locations.
Right.
And those are all, there was as many as 20,000 people who simply went to the wrong location. And sometimes they are passing 2 or 3 other locations and showing up to, maybe they pass the school and the Elks Lodge, and then they go to the library, and then the library says, you've been waiting in line here for 20 minutes. You are actually supposed to go down to the Elks Lodge. And that person is fed up and they're tired and it's the end of the day and they don't want to do it. And so they'll say, no, I'm going to just put in a vote. And so they would be given a provisional ballot. And then because they voted out of precinct, we wouldn't count it.
Yeah.
So now with electronic poll books, it doesn't matter. We will print your ballot specific to you and where you live. And so even if you live in Southside Tucson, but you happen to be at Mount Lemmon on election day, you could vote at Mount Lemmon and we would still issue you a ballot that was specific to Southside Tucson, but we would hand that to you on Mount Lemmon and easy peasy, you're in and out. And so the vote centers are completely administered. They are decided upon by the elections department, but the elections department could not do that work if my office did not do the groundwork of providing those electronic poll books. So it was stuck with our office, and we made the change. And that's why our county now has vote centers, because I saw that it was hurting our rural voters and our most marginalized people who show up on the bus, who took a bus to get to their voting location and then are turned away and told you actually had to go down the street, go ahead and get back out in 100-degree weather and go to this other location, or our wheelchair users or our elders. And so I wanted to make that change. And so that's why we really pushed hard for the vote centers through the electronic poll book.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mike, Brian, do we have any other questions in the chat room?
None right now. No, I haven't. Let me just review real quick and make sure I didn't overlook anything. I have not.
I see.
Okay.
What is the best phone number to call to get information on when I should get my voter card after submitting a change of address? So just so you know, the when you submit a change of request, you will automatically be sent a new voter registration card after we usually do them at a batch at the end of the month. And that way they can all go together and they're directly sent out through Phoenix. But otherwise you can call 724-4330, and you can also visit recorder.pima.gov to sign up for any of the things that I talked about: the fraud guard about your property, the text alerts about your ballot, or simply to ask about your current file. And please feel free to call any of those things. My staff can help you with. They are trained to give as much service as possible and be as friendly as possible. And I'm really proud of them. They do a great job.
Great. Well, Recorder Cazares-Kelly, thank you so much for being open to have the conversations that we've had. And this was a wonderful presentation with so much good information. We really appreciate it. And I have a feeling we might see a little bit down the road too. We'd love to have you.
Well, you know, the 2024 cycle is going to be confusing please invite me back. I would love to come back to share with you, because the more that I have active participants, you know, many of you are precinct captains, many of you knock doors. I want to make sure that you have the most accurate information. So please feel free to invite me back when it gets closer to election cycle, and I will provide as much information as you need.
Well, we are so lucky to have you.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.